The scripture passage this morning is from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 and 7, and John 10, 14 through 27, and James 1, 19 through 20, little snippets. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And from John, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. And from James, I'm proud that James had this wonderful statement because James is hard sometimes for me. James 1, 19 through 20. You must understand this, my beloved brothers and sisters. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for human anger does not produce God's righteousness. And it just occurred to me I should have thought of better ways to introduce Maggie. You all know Maggie Clark very well, but she's a longtime teacher, has had a great deal of experience, and if any of that fits into what you're doing, feel free to share with us. They've been members, for about 4 years or something like that? And I know what I want to say. And when I was up here one Sunday, sick of my own voice, I looked out at the congregation and I said, hey, sometime I want to listen while one of you speak. And Maggie called me the next week and said, I'm on. So here we go.
It was actually her Epiphany star. That was, so I felt compelled to support. Let us listen. This Maya Angelou quote resonates with me. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Much of the wisdom of this quote is actually what Maya Angelou leaves unsaid, that how we make others feel is born not out of our words and actions, but rather of our listening. But in a world filled with a cacophony of unrelenting sound, what does it mean to truly listen to one another, and how do we achieve that? Think for a minute about what that might look like and sound like for you. Lean in, ask, listen to understand, get quiet, seek nature, be still. May 29th is World Communication Day, established by Pope Paul VI in 1967 to encourage reflection on the opportunities and challenges of communication. Following is an extract from the upcoming message of His Holiness Pope Francis. Listening is much more than simply hearing. Hearing is about receiving information, while listening is about communication and calls for closeness. Listening allows us to get things right and not to simply be passive onlookers, users, or consumers. Listening also means being able to share questions and doubts, to journey side by side, and to put our abilities and gifts at the service of the common good. Listening is never easy. Many times it is easier to play deaf. Listening means paying attention, wanting to understand, to value, to respect, and to ponder what the other person says. Knowing how to listen is an immense grace. It is a gift for which we need to ask, and then make every effort to practice. American writer Margaret Wheatley has this to say: listening is such a simple act. It requires us to be present, and that takes practice. But we don't have to do anything else. We don't have to advise or coach or sound wise. We just have to be willing to sit and listen. Whatever life we have experienced, if we can tell our story to someone who listens, we find it easier to deal with our circumstances. She recounts this experience. A young Black South African woman taught some of my friends and I a profound lesson about listening. She was sitting in a circle of women from many nations, and each woman had the chance to tell a story from her life. When her turn came, she began to quietly tell a story of true horror, how she had found her grandparents slaughtered in their village. Many of the women were Westerners, and in the presence of such pain, they instinctively wanted to do something. They wanted to fix, to make it better, anything to remove the pain of this tragedy from such a young life. The young woman felt their compassion, but she also felt them closing in. She put her hands up as if to push back their desire to help. She said, "I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to listen to me." She taught many women that day that being listened to is enough. If we can speak our story and know that others hear it, we are somehow healed by that. Why might listening and feeling heard be enough? I think it has everything to do with the relationships being created when we listen to each other. Margaret Wheatley goes on to say, "We know from science that nothing in the universe exists as an isolated or independent entity. Everything takes the form of relationships, be it subatomic particles sharing energy or ecosystems sharing food. In the web of life, nothing lives alone. Our natural state is to be together. Though we keep moving away from each other, we haven't lost the need to be in relationships. Everybody has a story. Everyone wants to tell their story in order to connect. Listening is an integral part of creating relationships. By listening, we move closer to each other. We are hardwired to be interconnected with each other, our families, our friends, others in the community. How might we achieve this most fundamental need? James 1:19 gives us a tool. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak. Let's look at some others. I have been blessed to have an amazing inner circle of friends, and lucky for me, 2 are social workers, skillful in the art of building relationships. I learned life-changing listening lessons from both. Pam modeled leaning in. I watched her. Pam physically leaned in. In every conversation, she was completely focused on the person across the table. Nothing, not cell phones or background commotion or waiters or her own agenda distracted her. She always made me and everyone else feel like my story was the most important story. I was listened to, heard, acknowledged, and empowered. Minette taught me to ask. She was curious and compassionate. I visited her in the hospital one day and quickly realized that in just 2 days, she had learned the life story of everyone on the wing. It was a win-win. Minette focused on something other than the really serious and scary health issues she was dealing with. And every nurse, technician, custodian felt appreciated and valued. I started asking. I was traveling a lot for work at the time, mostly to New York City, and learned so much about the immigrant experiences of people coming to America by simply saying, "Tell me how you ended up being here as my driver today." Philosopher Simone Wells asserts that attention taken to its highest degree is the same thing as prayer. This inspiriting, sanctifying power of listening is what writer Holly McGee explores in the picture book Listen. Listen to the sound of your feet, the sound of all of us, and the sound of me. The stars, they are for you, and all of us, they are for me. Breathe, smell the air. My air is yours, and all of ours. Your air is mine. Your heart can hold everything, including the world, its darkness and its light, including your story, including my story, including the story of all of us. Lean in, ask. I was fortunate to be hired by Jefferson County Public Schools as an instructional coach in 2000. It was a newly created, research-based pilot program designed around the big idea that teachers can coach other teachers to improve their practice. Great idea, not an easy sell. The first teacher I met on day one said, "Oh, you're the one they sent to prod us along." And that was the prevailing sentiment. Teachers did not want us in their rooms. Luckily, there were 20 coaches in our group, as well as amazing leadership and professional development. We cried a lot and learned and figured out our way in together. These are just a few of our lessons learned. Number 1, leave your ego at the door. Number 2, listen with the intent to understand. Number 3, ask good questions. Number 4, paraphrase, and to me the most important one. To effectively paraphrase, one has to listen intently and in a focused way to ensure that you both hear and understand the other person. That requires suspending our inner voice, which often is urging us to plan what we are going to say next. Instead, a good paraphraser listens intentionally and strives to succinctly share what they heard the other person say. Number 5, ask how you can support. As teachers talked out loud about planning and instruction, next step decisions became clear and awareness increased. It worked. By the end of the year, the position expanded into every public school in Jeffco and continues today. Knowing how to effectively listen improved learning for teachers and students. Poet Mary Elizabeth Cotton explored these ideas in her poem, Deep Listening. Let us listen, just for a while. Let us silence our minds and open our hearts, just for a while. Let us listen from within. Listen, not to gain knowledge, not to formulate questions, rather to chance upon sacred bonds and profound wisdom. Let us not rouse the intellect, but embrace the spirit. If thoughts cloud the brain, let them pass. If words tingle on the tongue, let us breathe them away silently. Return to them later. But here, in this precious time of sharing, let us listen. Let the words wash over us and seep into a still, quiet pond. Let us listen. Lean in, ask, listen to understand. We live in such a noisy space. Research tells us the average person hears 20,000 to 30,000 words in a 24-hour period and is engaged in some form of communication 70% of each day, including constant news and entertainment feeds on our devices. Many of us consciously or unconsciously avoid silence. We seem to rush to fill the quiet with some sound or another, and yet only in silence can we hear the voice in our hearts. Listen and silent are spelled with the same letters. Silence allows us to open the door to our unconscious mind, feel the yearnings of our heart, follow the wisdom of our intuition, probe the origins of our aversions, and understand the truth of our experience, says Richard Mailer, author of a 2013 study on the impact of noise on the brain. It was discovered that 2 hours of silence each day, control rats develop new cells in the hippocampus, the center for emotion, memory, and learning. Silence can grow our brains. How do we make room for silence in our lives and remember how to listen? Chuck and I have the joy and the work of taking care of our 2.5-year-old grandson Christian a couple of days each week. Consequently, we have the luxury we didn't have as parents to drop everything and just be in the moment. His early learning has been sensory, enhanced by the fact that his parents said no screens before 2 years old. The television is off when he is with us. It is quiet, other than the noises we collectively make. Currently, it is dinosaurs stomping around the house. What was that noise is a frequent question, especially when we are outside, listening for the noise of trash trucks and chainsaws, watching birds at our feeders, or sitting quietly waiting for the bunny under the tree to appear. I find in these moments I am sighing a lot, just like I do when I'm in the mountains or on a beach. Most of us have had experiences like these. We know that nature is a balm, a place of peace that soothes the soul. The silence we experience there is unlike the silence we experience anywhere else. It is a silence in its purest form, the kind that quiets the mind, calms the body, and aligns the spirit with something greater than itself. Christian is always in the moment, unlike many of us, not thinking about the work that waits, the conversation that went south yesterday, the upcoming vacation. I am trying to be more like him, finding time for my gotta-do human nature to settle down and allow me to truly tune in to sounds and quiet. When these moments happen for me, I find gratitude, beauty, wonder, and awe wash over me. Our in-house favorite poet, Wendell Berry, has this to say: how to be a poet. Make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. You must depend on affection, reading, knowledge, more of each than you have. Inspiration, work, growing older, patience, for patience joins time to eternity. Any readers who like your poems, doubt their judgment. Breathe with unconditional breath, the unconditioned air. Shun electrical wire. Communicate slowly. Live a 3-dimensional life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. Accept what comes from silence. Make the best of it you can, of the little words that come out of the silence, like prayers. Pray back to the one who prays. Make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came. Lean in, ask, listen to understand, get quiet, seek nature. Writing this sermon has given me the opportunity to reflect on my own listening practices, and what I know for sure is that I am rarely quiet. If I am not talking aloud, the voice in my head is still rambling on. This certainly holds true in prayer. When I pray, I'm doing all the talking. Thank you for the gifts of this day. Please keep everyone I love safe and give those who are struggling the strength to continue, and on and on. My quest is to find time for quiet in prayer as well. Listening prayer is a practice in which we seek to quiet the noise of our lives, both inner and outer, to better listen to God's voice. It is a way to trust God that He will speak at a time of His choosing and that we will be listening. I am the Good Shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. Mother Teresa wrote in Something Beautiful for God, we need to find God, and He cannot be found in noise and restlessness. God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, grass, grow in silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. The more we receive in silent prayer, the more we can give in our active lives. We need silence to be able to touch souls. The essential thing is not what we say, but what God says to us and through us. Listen, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. This poem by Thomas Merton, 20th century American monk, captures this idea. Thoughts on solitude. When I am liberated by silence, when I'm no longer involved in the measurement of life, but in the living of it, I can discover a form of prayer in which there is effectively no distraction. My whole life becomes a prayer. My whole silence is full of prayer. The world of silence in which I am immersed contributes to my prayer. Let me seek then the gift of silence and solitude, where everything I touch is turned into prayer, where the sky is my prayer, the birds are my prayer, the wind in the trees is my prayer, for God is all in all. Lean in, ask, listen to understand, get quiet, seek nature, be still. Amen.